The message came on a quiet Tuesday morning. At first, the radio operators at Earth's Deep Space Listening Station thought it was just another burst of cosmic noise. But this signal was different. It repeated in perfect patterns, too organized to be natural. Jack Miller, the lead communications officer, hadn't slept for 20 hours when he finally cracked the first part of the alien code. His hand shook as he played the decoded message for his superiors. The voice that emerged from the speakers was unlike anything human ears had ever heard, a mix of clicks and humming that somehow formed words in perfect English. To any surviving civilizations, this is our final warning. The hunters are coming. They cannot be stopped. They cannot be reasoned with. They have devoured our worlds, our people, our history. Earth is next on their path. Within hours, every major government received the full message. The alien race, calling themselves the Last Watchers, had spent their final days sending warnings to all possible targets of the hunters. They described creatures that had evolved from the deadliest predators on their home world, beings that saw the entire galaxy as their hunting ground. Captain James Walker stood at attention in the United Nations Emergency Council chamber, his military uniform crisp despite the chaos of the past 48 hours. As Earth's leading expert in defense strategy, he had been called to present humanity's options. The room fell silent as he stepped up to the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady despite the weight of his words, "we face an enemy that has destroyed countless civilizations. The Last Watcher's message includes technical data about the hunters' ships, their tactics, and their biology." He paused, letting the information sink in. "But they also sent us something else. Hope." Walker brought up a holographic display showing complex molecular structures. "The hunters have never encountered a world like Earth. Our planet's diverse ecosystem, our adaptability, and our fighting spirit make us unique. Where other worlds fell in days, we have a chance to stand." The debate raged for hours. Some leaders wanted to try diplomacy, others suggested hiding, and a few even proposed surrender. But as Walker showed more of the Last Watcher's data, a grim determination settled over the room. The hunters didn't accept surrender. They didn't take prisoners. They consumed everything in their path. "We have one advantage," Walker continued, pointing to a timeline. "The Last Watcher's warning gives us time. The hunter fleet is currently 3 years from Earth. That's 3 years to prepare, to build, to unite. We've spent our history fighting each other. Now it's time to fight together." The next week saw the fastest global cooperation in human history. Old enemies became allies, borders became meaningless, and humanity's best minds focused on a single goal: survival. In his office overlooking the newly constructed Defense Force headquarters, Captain Walker studied the Last Watcher's final message. Something about it nagged at him, a detail others had missed. He played it again, focusing not on the words but on the tone. Behind the warning, there was something else. Not just fear of the hunters, but something that sounded almost like excitement. He zoomed in on one particular section. "Of all the worlds we've warned, yours is different. Your species has something we've never seen before. You thrive on challenge. Where others evolve to fit their environment, you change your environment to fit you. The hunters have never faced a prey that fights back. They've never faced humans." Walker smiled as he looked out his window at the ships taking shape in the massive construction yards. The hunters thought they were the galaxy's perfect predators, but they were about to learn a hard lesson. Humanity had risen from prey to predator long ago on the savannas of Africa. They had outsmarted bigger, stronger, faster creatures throughout their evolution. Now, they would do it again. The hunt was about to begin. In the months following the warning, Earth changed faster than anyone thought possible. Old cities grew upward and downward, with new levels built underground to protect civilians. The skies filled with construction drones as humanity prepared for war. Dr. Maria Ross hadn't left her lab at the Global Defense Research Center for 3 days. Her team had been studying the biological data from the Last Watchers, looking for any weakness in the hunter's anatomy. Cups of cold coffee littered her desk as she stared at test results on her holographic display. "Run it again," she told her computer. The simulation showed Earth bacteria interacting with hunter cell samples. Most of the bacteria died instantly, but one strain did something unexpected. It multiplied. "Stop." She leaned forward, eyes wide. "That's it. That's what we've been missing." She grabbed her phone and called Captain Walker directly. At the same time, in the Nevada desert, the first of Earth's new warships took shape. They were smaller than the massive hunter vessels described in the warnings, but they were fast and agile. Commander Tom Brooks watched from the control tower as his pilots ran combat drills. "They're learning fast," he said to Walker, who stood beside him. "The simulations show our ships can outmaneuver the hunters in close combat. We might not be stronger, but we're definitely quicker." Walker nodded, but his attention was on his phone. Dr. Ross just made a breakthrough. The hunters might not be as unstoppable as they think. He showed Brooks the preliminary data. Their biology is so specialized for combat that it's vulnerable to some of Earth's simplest life forms. They've never encountered our bacteria before. The discovery changed their entire strategy. While the military prepared for space combat, biological research stations around the world worked to develop new weapons. They weren't just fighting with guns and ships anymore. They were fighting with microscopic allies that had evolved on Earth over billions of years. In underground bunkers, civilians trained for survival. Children learned to operate emergency equipment, adults practiced evacuation drills, and everyone studied the enemy. Knowledge was power, and humanity needed every advantage they could get. 1 year passed, then 2. Earth's orbit filled with defense satellites and early warning systems. The moon became a fortress, its dark side hiding shipyards and weapon factories. Mars colonies were evacuated, their resources redirected to the war effort. In his private moments, Walker worried, not about losing. That wasn't an option, but about what victory would cost. He stood in the observation dome of the orbital command station, watching Earth spin below. The planet looked peaceful from up here, but he knew better. Every continent was armed and ready. Dr. Ross joined him, her lab coat wrinkled from another long day of work. "The latest tests are positive," she said. "The bacteria we've modified doesn't just survive contact with hunter biology. It thrives. Their immune systems have no defense against it, because they've never needed one." Walker replied. "They've been the top predators for so long, they've lost the ability to adapt." He turned to face her. "That's their weakness. They think they're perfect, so they've stopped evolving. But humans, we never stop changing," Ross finished. "Every challenge makes us stronger." The alert came 3 months earlier than expected. Long-range sensors detected hunter scout ships entering the solar system. They moved with confidence, clearly not expecting any resistance. They had done this hundreds of times before, after all. "Scout ahead, identify weaknesses, report back to the main fleet." But this time was different. This time, their prey was waiting. "All stations report ready," Brooks announced from his command ship. Around Earth, defense platforms powered up. Hidden weapons arrays emerged from the lunar surface. And in laboratories around the world, Dr. Ross and her team prepared their biological weapons. The hunters thought they were starting another simple hunt. Instead, they were about to meet humanity's full arsenal: technology, biology, and most importantly, the unbreakable human spirit. The real test was about to begin. The first battle for Earth's survival didn't happen on Earth at all. It started at the Mars defense line, where Commander Tom Brooks waited with his fleet of small, fast ships. The hunter scouts had entered the solar system expecting easy prey. Instead, they found humanity's first surprise. "All ships, maintain radio silence," Brooks ordered from his command chair. His vessel, the Swift Strike, was hidden in the shadow of Phobos, Mars's larger moon. 5 other ships waited with him, their engines cold, their weapons ready. They watched as 3 massive hunter vessels approached Mars. The alien ships were ugly things, all sharp angles and dark metal, like giant space-borne predators. They moved with arrogant confidence, not bothering to scan for threats. Why should they? No prey species had ever fought back before. "Wait for it," Brooks whispered, more to himself than his crew. The hunter ships spread out, beginning their standard search pattern. Wait for it. The largest hunter ship passed directly over them. Brooks counted down in his head. 3, 2, 1. Now. All ships, attack pattern Delta. The swift strike and its sister ships burst from hiding, engines flaring to full power. They struck from below, where the hunter ship's armor was weakest. Energy beams designed by Earth's best scientists cut through the alien hulls like hot knives through butter. The hunters reacted with surprise, an emotion they hadn't felt in centuries. Their ships tried to turn, to bring their main weapons to bear, but Earth's vessels were too quick. Brooks had studied their tactics for 2 years. He knew they relied on overwhelming force and fear. They had no defense against an enemy that wasn't afraid. "Second wave, launch," Brooks commanded. From the surface of Mars, hidden bunkers opened. Dozens of automated fighter drones rose into space, surrounding the hunter ships. Each drone carried a payload of Dr. Ross's modified bacteria, sealed in special containers. The largest hunter vessel managed to destroy 3 drones, but 4 more got through. They attached to its hull and released their biological weapons. The bacteria began eating through the ship's biomechanical systems immediately. "Their shields are failing," Brooks's tactical officer reported. "The bacteria are working faster than expected." The other 2 hunter ships tried to retreat, but Earth's forces had positioned themselves perfectly. Every escape route was blocked. When they tried to call for help, they found their communications jammed by systems hidden on Mars' moons. The battle lasted just 17 minutes. When it was over, 2 hunter ships were destroyed, and 1 was captured mostly intact. Not a single human life was lost. In his office back on Earth, Captain Walker watched the battle recordings with a grim smile. The hunters had made a fatal mistake. They had judged humanity by the other species they had conquered. They expected fear, panic, and disorganized resistance. Instead, they found carefully planned ambushes and weapons designed specifically to counter their strengths. Dr. Ross burst into his office, waving a tablet. "The data from the captured ship is incredible," she exclaimed. "Their entire technology is based on biological systems. That's why our bacteria are so effective. We're not just damaging their ships, we're infecting them." Walker nodded. "And their main fleet?" "Still coming," Ross replied, her excitement fading slightly. "These were just scouts. The real test will be when their armada arrives." "But now we know our weapons work," Walker said. "And more importantly, we know they can be hurt. They can be killed." He stood and walked to the window, looking up at the sky. Somewhere out there, the hunter fleet was approaching, still confident in their superiority. They didn't know that their scouts had been defeated. They didn't know their weaknesses had been discovered. They didn't know that humans had turned their own predatory nature against them. The first battle was over. Humanity had won. But the war was just beginning, and the next fight would be much, much harder. Yet for the first time since receiving the warning, Walker felt real hope. The galaxy's greatest predators were about to learn that humans were not prey. They were the ultimate survivors. In the wake of their first victory, humans made a discovery that changed everything. Deep within the captured hunter ship, military scientists found something unexpected. The aliens relied almost entirely on artificial intelligence for their battle tactics. "Look at this," Dr. Ross said, pointing to the alien ship's computer core. She and Captain Walker stood in a heavily guarded research facility, examining the biomechanical brain of the captured vessel. Their entire combat system is based on perfect logic. Every move, every strategy is calculated to mathematical precision. Walker watched as the computer simulation showed how the hunters fought. That's why they lost the first battle, he realized. They couldn't understand why our ships did things that made no tactical sense. Exactly, Ross smiled. Human unpredictability confuses their systems. When Commander Brooks had his ships attack from below instead of head-on, their combat AI couldn't process it. It was looking for the most logical approach, not the most creative one. The discovery spread excitement through Earth's defense forces. While the hunters had spent centuries perfecting their logical combat systems, humans had developed something far more powerful: imagination. In orbit above Earth, Commander Brooks trained new pilots in what they now called chaos tactics. Small ships would perform random maneuvers, breaking every rule of space combat. The hunter's AI couldn't predict what it couldn't understand. "Don't think like a soldier," Brooks told his pilots during a training session. "Think like a street fighter. Be unpredictable. Be creative. Most importantly, be human." Meanwhile, Dr. Ross made another breakthrough. In her lab, she stood before a wall of screens showing DNA patterns. "The hunters evolved to be perfect predators," she explained to Walker. "But that's their weakness. They stopped evolving because they thought they were perfect." She brought up images of human DNA next to hunter DNA. "Look at the difference. Our DNA shows thousands of adaptations from surviving different challenges. We've evolved to handle everything from Arctic cold to tropical heat. The hunters, they've been the same for millennia." Walker understood immediately. "That's why your bacteria work so well against them. They have no defense against new threats." "And that's not all," Ross continued, her eyes bright with excitement. "Their ships are partially organic. They grow them rather than build them. If we can introduce our modified bacteria into their shipyards, we could stop them from making new ships entirely," Walker finished. The next few weeks saw frantic activity as Earth prepared its defenses. Underground factories produced millions of capsules filled with Ross's bacteria. Every human ship was equipped with both traditional weapons and biological delivery systems. But the hunters weren't idle. Their main fleet was approaching, and this time they would be ready for resistance. Long-range scans showed they had modified their ships, adding new armor and weapons. In the orbital command center, Walker received reports from scout ships. "The hunter fleet is twice as large as we expected," he told the Earth Defense Council. "Over 1,000 ships. They're adapting." "But not fast enough," Brooks added from his position on the main screen. "Our latest combat simulations show their AI is still vulnerable to chaos tactics. They can't rewrite centuries of programming in a few weeks." Dr. Ross joined the meeting, her face serious but confident. "And our latest bacterial strains are even more effective than the first generation. Their biological adaptations are too slow to counter us." Walker looked at the tactical display showing the approaching hunter fleet. They were still using perfect formations, still following logical patterns. They hadn't learned the true lesson of their first defeat. "The hunters think they know what we'll do," he said. "They think they can calculate our every move. But they don't understand what makes humans special. We don't just adapt, we imagine. We don't just fight, we create. And most importantly, we don't just survive, we thrive on challenges." The final battle was approaching. Humanity's greatest test waited just beyond Mars' orbit. But now, they knew something the hunters didn't. The galaxy's perfect predators were about to face something they'd never encountered before: prey that had become predators themselves. The hunter fleet appeared as a dark cloud against the stars, their 1,000 ships blocking out the distant sun. On Earth's command screens, they looked like a swarm of metal insects, all sharp edges and deadly purpose. But humanity was ready. "All stations report combat ready," Commander Brooks announced from his flagship. Around Earth, defense platforms hummed to life. The moon's hidden weapons emerged from their camouflaged positions. And most importantly, every ship carried Dr. Ross's latest biological weapons. Captain Walker stood in the orbital command center, watching the tactical displays. "Begin Operation Thunderstrike," he ordered. His voice was calm, but his hands gripped the command rail tightly. Everything they had planned, Everything they had prepared for came down to this moment. The first wave of human ships launched, but not toward the enemy. Instead, they flew away from Earth, apparently in panic. The Hunter fleet responded exactly as predicted. They split into smaller groups to chase what they thought was fleeing prey. "They're taking the bait," Brooks reported. "Their combat eye still thinks we're just scared animals running away." He allowed himself a small smile. Time to show them how wrong they are. The fleeing human ships suddenly turned, flying directly into the gaps between Hunter squadrons. Before the alien AI could adjust, Earth's second wave struck from hidden positions behind asteroids and space debris. Chaos erupted as planned. Small, agile human fighters darted between the massive Hunter ships, their seemingly random movements confusing the alien targeting systems. Larger Earth vessels launched clouds of Ross's bacterial weapons, hidden in normal missile casings. "Their front line is breaking," someone shouted. The Hunter ships, trying to follow their programmed tactics, couldn't handle the unpredictable attack patterns. Some crashed into each other trying to target the swift human vessels. But the Hunters weren't defeated yet. Their command ship, a monster twice the size of all others, launched a devastating counterattack. Energy beams sliced through space, destroying several human ships instantly. "They're adapting faster than expected," Brooks reported, his voice tense. "We need to take out that command ship now." Walker watched as the battle raged. The Hunters' logical tactics were failing against human chaos, but their sheer numbers and firepower were taking a toll. Earth's forces had already lost 30 ships. They couldn't afford a long battle. "Launch Protocol Omega," Walker commanded. Across the battlefield, human ships suddenly released clouds of shimmering particles, billions of microscopic robots carrying Ross's bacteria. The Hunters' energy weapons ionized the cloud, making it glow like a nebula. "They think it's just a smoke screen," Ross said from her station. She had insisted on watching the battle, monitoring the effectiveness of her weapons. "But every particle they blast is spreading the bacteria through their ship's ventilation systems." The effect wasn't instant, but it was devastating. Hunter ships began losing power as their biomechanical systems were attacked from within. Their perfect formations broke apart as ships struggled to maintain control. The command ship recognized the threat too late. As it turned to retreat, Brooks led a final assault. All ships, Convergence Pattern Alpha, hit them with everything. Hundreds of human ships attacked at once, their seemingly random movements actually part of a carefully planned strike. The Hunter command ship's defenses, designed to counter logical attacks, couldn't track the chaos of human battle tactics. Walker watched as Brooks's ships struck from all directions at once. The giant Hunter vessel's shields failed under the assault. Moments later, its hull cracked, exposed to the bacteria-laden space around it. "The command ship is down," Brooks announced. His voice was hoarse but triumphant. "Repeat, the command ship is down." Without central control, the Hunter fleet fell into disarray. Some ships tried to retreat. Others continued fighting, but their perfect coordination was gone. For the first time in their history, the galaxy's greatest predators knew fear. The battle wasn't over. There were still hundreds of Hunter ships fighting. But as Walker watched Earth's forces press their advantage, he knew the tide had turned. Humanity had proven what the last Watchers suspected. The perfect predator's greatest weakness was its own perfection. And humans, magnificent in their imperfection, had finally shown the galaxy that being preyed didn't mean being powerless. News of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. The Hunters' perfect communication network, designed to coordinate their attacks, now carried word of their defeat to every corner of their empire. And the conquered species were listening. "We're picking up transmissions from at least 20 different worlds," the communications officer told Captain Walker. 3 days had passed since the Great Battle, and Earth's command center was buzzing with new information. "They're all asking the same thing. How did we do it?" Walker stood before the holographic map showing Hunter-controlled space. Red dots marked enslaved worlds, but now many were turning green as their populations rose up against their oppressors. The impossible had happened. Prey was fighting back. The hunters never expected this, Dr. Ross said, studying the reports. They thought beating them in one battle was impossible. Now their slaves see them as vulnerable. She smiled. Fear works both ways. Commander Brooks's voice came through the command channel. His fleet was pursuing retreating hunter ships, but he had even better news. The bacterial weapons are spreading through their network of biomechanical ships. Every time they try to grow new vessels, the bacteria infect them. Their entire production system is failing. But the most surprising message came from a species calling themselves the First Conquered, the first civilization the hunters had enslaved thousands of years ago. Their message was simple: teach us to fight like you do. Walker gathered Earth's leadership to make a decision. The choice was clear. Humanity could either let the enslaved worlds fight alone, or they could lead the rebellion. It wasn't really a choice at all. Send them everything, Walker ordered. Our tactics, our technology, and most importantly, our bacteria. He looked at the assembled leaders. The hunters made one final mistake. They created an empire of slaves who all want revenge. Earth became the center of a growing alliance. Ships from liberated worlds arrived carrying representatives of species the hunters had conquered. Each brought their own knowledge, their own technologies, their own ways of fighting. In the orbital shipyards, Dr. Ross worked with alien scientists to improve their biological weapons. Every species brings new ideas, she told Walker during a rare break. The hunters thought being perfect meant never changing. But look at this. She showed him a simulation where different species technologies combined with human chaos tactics. The result was something entirely new: weapons and defenses the hunters couldn't possibly predict. Commander Brooks led joint training missions, teaching alien crews how to fight unpredictably. Forget everything the hunters taught you about combat, he would say. They want order. Give them chaos. They want logic. Give them imagination. The hunter empire began to crumble. Without their production systems, they couldn't replace lost ships. Without their perfect tactics, they lost battle after battle. But most importantly, without fear to keep their slaves in line, their entire society began to fall apart. They're retreating to their home system, Brooks reported 1 month later. The holographic map now showed more green worlds than red. Their fleet is down to less than 100 ships. Their empire is collapsing faster than anyone predicted. Walker watched as another group of alien ships arrived in Earth orbit. These vessels were different. Not hunter bioships, but unique designs from newly freed worlds. Each represented a species learning to think for themselves again, to fight, to be free. The hunters called themselves perfect predators, Walker said to the assembled alien representatives in Earth's new alliance chamber. But they forgot something important. True perfection isn't about being unchanging. It's about adapting, growing, learning from every challenge. He gestured to the diverse group before him. Beings of all shapes and sizes, each with their own strengths, their own ways of thinking. That's humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not just weapons or tactics, but the reminder that being different, being unpredictable, being imperfect, that's what makes us strong. The former prey species were learning fast. The hunters' perfect empire was falling to something they never understood: the beautiful chaos of freedom. And humanity, the species that sparked this revolution, was leading the way to a very different kind of galaxy. 1 year after the Great Battle, Earth looked different. Alien ships of all shapes and sizes filled its orbit. The moon, once a hidden fortress, had become a bustling center of interstellar commerce. But the biggest changes were invisible to the eye. Captain Walker stood at the window of the new Galactic Defense Council building, watching ships land and take off. Next to him, Dr. Ross was explaining their latest discoveries to a group of alien scientists. The beings looked nothing like humans. Some had tentacles, others multiple eyes, some were even crystalline in form. but they all shared the same intense interest in learning. The hunters have been contained in their home system, Commander Brooks reported, joining them at the window. His uniform now bore the insignia of the combined fleet, a force made up of ships from every freed world. Their remaining ships can't leave without being infected by our bacteria. They're trapped. And the rest of the galaxy? Walker asked, though he already knew the answer. The tactical display behind them showed a very different map than a year ago. Where the Hunter Empire had once dominated in red, now thousands of green dots marked free worlds. The last enslaved world was liberated yesterday, Brooks said with satisfaction. The Hunters' perfect empire lasted 10,000 years. We helped bring it down in less than 2. Dr. Ross turned from her alien colleagues. But that's not the most interesting part, she said, her eyes bright with excitement. Show him the latest data. Brooks nodded and brought up a new display. It showed the Hunter home system, but something was different. They're changing, he explained. Without their empire, without their biological ships, they're being forced to adapt. Some of them are even trying to communicate. Walker watched the data scroll past. The Hunters, faced with defeat for the first time in their history, were evolving. Their perfect, unchanging society had been broken, and in its place, something new was growing. They're learning, Ross said softly. Just like we did, just like all life must. Perfect predators can't survive in an imperfect universe. The door chimed, and Walker's assistant entered. Sir, the first session of the Galactic Council is about to begin. Walker nodded and straightened his uniform. 1 year ago, he had been Earth's defender. Now he was humanity's representative to a galaxy of free species. As he walked to the council chamber, he passed dozens of aliens going about their business. Each one nodded respectfully, not in fear, as they once had to the Hunters, but in friendship. The council chamber was a marvel of combined technology. Each species had added their own touch to its construction. The ceiling was a perfect recreation of the galaxy, showing real-time updates of ships and trade routes. At the center stood a simple podium, waiting for the first speaker. Walker took his place among the representatives. Beings that had once been prey species now sat tall and proud. Their differences were striking. Some breathed different gases, others lived in water tanks. Some communicated through color changes or electromagnetic pulses. But they were all equal here. 1 year ago, Walker began his opening speech. Humanity faced its greatest challenge. We were told the Hunters were perfect, unstoppable, invincible. We were told we were just prey. He looked around the chamber, meeting eyes, tentacles, and sensory organs of all kinds. But we proved that perfection isn't about being unchanging. It's not about being the strongest or the most ruthless. True perfection is about growing, adapting, working together. The assembled representatives nodded, each in their own way. They had all learned this lesson. The Hunters taught the galaxy that predators rule. Walker continued. We taught the galaxy something else, that diversity is strength, that change is necessary, that imperfection is beautiful. He smiled as he delivered his final words. They believed they were unstoppable because they were perfect. We proved them wrong by being perfectly imperfect. And now, together, we'll build something better than a perfect empire. We'll build a free galaxy. The chamber erupted in sounds of approval from 1,000 different species. Outside, ships continued their peaceful orbits around Earth, and somewhere, in their home system, even the Hunters were learning a new way to live. The age of the perfect predator was over. The age of beautiful imperfection had begun.